the way in which we use hydrogen will create the way in which we invest.
All right, startups, entrepreneurs, and wantrepreneurs, get ready for a wild ride into the hydrogen frontier with Uwe Kerkmann, the mastermind steering H2UB, the launchpad catapulting hydrogen startups into the stratosphere. Today, we're not just scratching the surface, we're blasting through to the core of what it means to launch a startup. Uwe is here to drop some serious knowledge on how H2UB is sparking a firestorm of innovation and what it really takes to fuel a startup to success in this high-stakes world of hydrogen energy. But first things first, Uwe, welcome and give us a short intro on who is Uwe Kerkmann.
Thank you very much, Arne, for inviting me to this talk, and it's a pleasure to be here. Well, who is Uwe Kerkmann? I'm an economic development professional for many years. I started my career working in German-Japanese business relations and worked for quite a long time for foreign direct investment and international innovation ecosystem at the German city of Düsseldorf, and further on for the Ministry of Economics in our German state of North Rhine-Westphalia. I've been always focusing on international exchange, but also on innovation and innovative ecosystems and what they do to local business ecosystems. So finally, I ended in a sector that I think will be mattering most in the future to secure the future by addressing global warming, by addressing climate change, by addressing sustainability and innovation. And this is how I landed up at H2 Hub. And now I'm organizing this very unique open innovation platform for the whole of Europe.
What sparked your passion to center your mission around hydrogen energy?
Well, the first thing is, well, hydrogen is a most common molecule. So it's not a secret that without hydrogen, there would be no world, there would be no Earth. So it is a very common thing. Yet, when it comes to business, hydrogen is still in an infant phase of development when it comes to the hydrogen market and doing things with hydrogen. Of course, we are familiar with hydrogen. There's a gray hydrogen industry that is working quite well, but green hydrogen or hydrogen as a new topic to pursue goals of climate protection and energy transition, that was quite new. And to me, it was very interesting to see this gap between a very, as I said, common molecule and a very interesting market that is yet to be ramped up and yet to be evolving.
Once upon a time, H2UB was a startup, and I know how that feels. Can you walk us through the early days? What kind of mountains did you have to move to get H2UB off the ground?
Well, we are still a startup. We have been founded just 2.5 years ago, and we are still on our journey to become even bigger, to scale, like we want other startups to scale. And when I think of the early days, it was mainly about convincing supporters and people to believe in the role that startups play when it comes to the ramp up of the hydrogen market. Because we had the assumption that in order to achieve as many ideas to ramp up the hydrogen market, to introduce new technologies to the energy sector, to different industry sectors, it's really important to ask the question, where does all the innovation come from? And it doesn't come from, or it doesn't necessarily come from R&D departments of companies. It comes from universities and scientific institutions. But how is it introduced into this market that is yet very young, that is not developed. And there are so many question marks when it comes to the hydrogen economy. So this was about convincing supporters, convincing people that this is a big issue. And the challenge was really big to convince our supporters because the first question they ask is, well, you want to support hydrogen startups? How many hydrogen startups are there in Europe or in Germany? And the number was quite astonishing because it was really, really small. 2.5 years ago, there were roughly 420 startups around Europe that were dealing in one or the other way with hydrogen. So compared to other startup ecosystems, it's a very tiny ecosystem. And those 420 startups were like scattered over Europe, from Scandinavia to the southern part of Spain, from Greece to the UK, from Israel to Ireland. So there was the question of, well, is this an ecosystem at all? And this is what we were about to do, to build an ecosystem for those startups dealing with hydrogen along the whole and very long value chain, meaning that some startups are dealing with hydrogen production, some are dealing with storage distribution, some are dealing with digital solutions, organizing the new market and the new ecosystem for hydrogen. So it's a very heterogeneous community, let's say it like that. And it was a big issue to form an ecosystem out of those or for those startups in order to be useful and in order to get a stepstone towards the ramping up hydrogen market. But
So
we finally succeeded in convincing, obviously, supporters and our shareholders to set this up, and I'm quite happy that we could do that.
Assuming that you started your business with some goals, what's the big dream for H2UB? Where do you see it driving the global hydrogen economy?
Well, at first we started to address startups in Europe, and the big dream is, of course, to make this open innovation platform for hydrogen innovation along the whole value chain a global issue, because we see that climate change, climate protection, energy transformation, or the transition of the energy industry and the adoption of many, many industries when it comes to decarbonization or defossilization. This is definitely not a regional matter. It's not a European matter. It's a global matter. So now we see that after 2.5 years of work, a lot of European startups make use of our platform. We get a lot of interest also from corporates, from investors and VCs. So we see that the platform is working. And what we experience right now is that also startups and companies from other parts of the world, from Asia, from South America, from Canada, Australia, from the Middle East, are also taking an interest in our work and want to get in a way. So we are planning to make this global and to organize a global open innovation platform that enables especially startups to be part of the hydrogen economy that is evolving.
Talking about that, how does H2UB help startups navigate the wild waters of hydrogen market?
Well, the first thing is that from the beginning, we set up an acceleration program, incubation and acceleration program to work with the startups to, at first, of course, understand what they are doing, to give advice, and, which is very important, to introduce partners from different industry, experts from different sectors, to support startups working on their idea, to check if the idea is ready for the market, to see how startups should engage in an environment that is not yet ready for all the innovation that is needed, meaning there's a great reluctancy in traditional industries and businesses not to work with startups, which is quite common now, but to engage in hydrogen. Because there's still a question of how will the market look like? what kind of impulses does the market need by politics, for example, to be kind of configured. So what we can do is to introduce market conditions to the startups and at the same time support startups in getting better addressing this market. And this is basically what we are doing in the acceleration process.
What standout initiatives or programs do you have for turbocharging startups' growth?
Well, the most outstanding program we have developed is our H2 Hub Sprint. It is a 10-week program aiming to accelerate those startups and their ideas. And while there are other programs around calling themselves hydrogen accelerators, we are quite successful in dealing with our program and onboarding startups from all over Europe, meanwhile, because we decided to have really a tailor-made and individual program. So we have no one fits for all thing, but we onboard 5 to 6 startups, have a look at their technology, have a look at their technology readiness level, of course, talking about their perspectives in the market, what role they would like to play in the market. And then we select from an international expert and mentor pool the expert that is needed in order to support a specific startup. So this is a very, very individual thing. It just takes 10 weeks because we know startups are busy and time is money. And when startups come from all over Europe, you can't do this in a 6-month program. So it is a very, very pushy, a very, very challenge-driven and individual program. And meanwhile, we have onboarded 23 startups already during the last 2.5 years. And the feedback from the startup is really astonishing. Like they always tell us it's so good not only to get advice on our business model or pitch deck or pitching qualities, but to get in contact with real industry experts who take an interest in what we are doing and who are willing to give advice. And this is quite valuable for the startups. So this makes our program a great success from my perspective.
When scouting for potential, what makes hydrogen startup stand out to you?
Well, in general, it's the same criteria than in other startup ecosystems. Of course, it is the business idea, the quality of the team, the relevance for the market, which is very interesting and very important, potential of scalability, TRL levels, and so on. So I think this is not so much different from other startup ecosystems. There should be like a team or an idea that's really worth engaging with, and this is how we select the startups.
As you already said it, collaboration is huge at H2UB. Can you dive into how this shapes the programs you offer?
Yes, I can. So when you consider that the hydrogen value chain is really long, to offer a hydrogen acceleration program or to offer support for hydrogen startups, what does this really mean? Since hydrogen is not an industry, it's a molecule basically. It can be a feedstock, it can be an energy carrier. So for us, it's really important to select which part of the hydrogen value chain the startup is addressing, and then onboard the respective experts from a wide pool of international experts. And this makes it really, really special. And we are convinced that that this principle of including industry experts makes it really outstanding from other acceleration programs as well. Because it's getting really, as I said, individualistic. Individually, the startups can address their own things and work on that with their mentors and experts. And without this engagement of industry partners and VCs and experts, it wouldn't be possible to give advice to so many different startups working on very different things like hardware electrolyzing technology or fuel cell technology, or a digital solution to integrate green hydrogen into complex industry setups, or storage startups that experiment or deal with the opportunities of store hydrogen compressed or however. So it's really important for us to not only to grow our network of startups, but also to make our networks of industry experts and mentors bigger, so that we can select from a pool of highly professional people the right person or the right company to support a certain startup. And this makes it special, and I think this is very important for the startups as well.
Yeah, definitely. Breaking into any market is tough, especially with cutting-edge tech like hydrogen. How does H2UB assist startups in securing funding and financial backing?
Well, unlike other acceleration programs or supporting programs, we are not engaging financially with the startups. This is partly so because we are funded or co-funded by the German government for 5 years to set up this H2 hub. But this is basically also to stay neutral, because many acceleration programs who also offer to invest in the startups or take stock options or whatever, they are not quite neutral. So we try to be, or we are neutral when it comes to, we believe in an idea. Nevertheless, we do not invest in the idea. But as you said rightly, we need people, we need investors, we need VCs, we need funding for the startups. And what we do is, the first thing is to give exposure to those startups, because it's quite complicated when you have such a small ecosystem with only roughly 500, now it's roughly 500 startups working on hydrogen. Even the big VCs and even the big investors do not have an overview who is doing what in Europe, at which university is what kind of technology developed. So we are bringing those people together, the startups and the investors, and this is the first important step, because there are a lot of interesting investors that are dedicated to invest in green technologies, to invest in green hydrogen. So it's a question of matchmaking. And this is what we are doing. We offer opportunities to pitch. We offer opportunities to be visible, not only here in Germany, in Essen, where we are located, but also traveling to trade fairs, to conferences all over the world meanwhile. And so we give the startups the chance to pitch, to be visible. And the second thing is, as I said, since the programs that we are offering are so individualistic, and we know a lot of those about those startups, and we get an expert for their technology and their approach as well. Sometimes it's really easy to introduce startups to VCs if the startups do not approach the startups directly. So we are a kind of mediator, and we are doing this, as I said, traveling to conferences, but we are also inviting startups and investors once a year to Essen, where we organize our own conference, the Hydroverse Convention, and has been staged for the second time in June now. And there were over 70 international VCs and investors, over 50 startups from all over Europe. So the matchmaking is really working.
What are the most common problems startups face through different stages?
Well, I think apart from those problems that every startup faces, to build up the right team, to be dedicated to what you are doing and what you want to try to achieve, for hydrogen startups, the major problem for us is that it is a politically driven market. It is not something that has evolved because it was economically feasible or it was the right thing to do economically. Because if hydrogen were a big economic success and an easygoing thing, then everybody would do it. But we have to keep in mind that especially the green hydrogen economy is ramping up because there have been political decisions. And in this environment, it's really complicated for startups where not every decision is yet made and not every path is laid out. It's really a challenge for them to take their courage and found a company in an environment where you can't be sure who really will be your customer, who really will be your partner, and for example, very importantly, what will be the price for your product? What will be the price for the hydrogen? We have a lot of projections here. We have a lot of plans here. We have a lot of targets here. But many things are in a projection phase, you know. So for startups that take their own money normally, or start to run or start a business, it takes a lot to be active in this area because they believe in the market that is ramping up at some point, and therefore it's really important and quite complicated for the startups to be seen in a market where, for example, they have a technology that is putting more efficiency into electrolysis, for example. And the common answer of the market of investors would be, well, why is this necessary? And the necessity of all these things comes from, if we want to reach the climate goals, for example, of the European Union or the global climate goals, then we need to really haste or make haste and do whatever we can to include as much as innovation as possible into our channels. And this is different to other sectors where startups disrupt a market or an industry that is running by whatever old principles or analog principles and do it digitally or whatever. But in this respect, there is nothing to disrupt, because the hydrogen economy is kind of squeezing in the energy business as it was, the old energy world based on electrons, and the new industry that has to decarbonize and has to use molecules before that. So it's really a unique situation for the startups that makes it really thrilling. It makes it thrilling for us and for my team, but it's really a challenge also for the startups, because it takes a lot to get through with your message.
Talking about disruption, we know, yes, it's a small market, but there's still a space to disrupt when it comes to the technologies. And can you share any breakthrough hydrogen projects from H2UB that are setting the industry on fire in this perspective?
Well, there are a lot of startups that really get a lot of attention by the established industry, especially when it comes to efficiency, when it comes to saving money by using other materials, by using less raw materials or high-priced materials. So efficiency is one thing that is very important. So next generation electrolyzers are really a hot topic at the moment. So we have a standard way of producing hydrogen via electrolyzers, be it PEM electrolyzers or alkaline electrolyzers. But what's really the hot stuff at the moment is electrolyzers that do it differently, more efficiently, very cost effective. And for example, we awarded Stargate, a startup from Europe, with our Hydroverse Award in June, because they are working on a very efficient alkaline electrolyzer that is attracting a lot of interest from the community.
You told me how you connect mentors with startups, but I'm also interested, how is H2UB fusing hard science with entrepreneurial spirit to keep these startups innovative?
That's a very important question. Since I said the hydrogen market is yet evolving, and the targets that have been set for the hydrogen market are basically political goals. So there's no wonder we do not see thousands of startups working in this field, but a couple of hundreds, very brave, very talented people. But a lot of innovation is still waiting in science, because scientists are working with hydrogen, with electrolyzers, with fuel cells, and then again, more detailed with membranes or electrodes or catalysts for quite a long time. But it is very important to get this innovative power into the market. So we are teaming up with a lot of scientific institutions, with universities, to establish contacts between startups that are already in the market and need more like scientific power for their startups, or the other way is much more interesting, to support scientists to bring their idea to the market, maybe by joining forces with an entrepreneur who has been successful in other business field and now, as myself, wants to dive in this really great topic of hydrogen and sustainability and energy. So by teaming those people up, this is a good way to bring together management knowledge and high-tech technological scientific knowledge. And this is what we are trying to do. It's not easy, because for decades now, people in Europe are working on schemes to make, as Ms. von der Leyen once said, to make more money with scientific results than we do. We are really brilliant in Europe when it comes to science, and sometimes we are not as brilliant when it comes to making money with it. We pump a lot of money into science to get even better results, but then we are not yet as good as getting startups out of science. And this is what we are working also on. Many scientists address us and ask us, what can we do? And for example, our fourth shareholder is the German Aerospace Center, a very, very big scientific institution that, of course, is also working on hydrogen. And by like integrating those specialists and those talented people in our ecosystem, we are convinced that step by step, we will see even more startups being founded by scientists or together with scientists in Europe.
What are the titanic obstacles facing the hydrogen industry today, and how is H2UB addressing them?
Well, we would like to do more, but the main challenge at the moment and the titanic problem is really a small one, or it seems to be a small one, because it is the typical hen and egg problem. Like when we address the market, it's really important to define what's more important, or where to put your money and where to put your energy. Is it the production of enough hydrogen so that we can use it to transform the energy business and many industries? Or do we wait for those industries and the energy business to be ready to use hydrogen in every aspect? Are we waiting for the infrastructure to be built first and then decide where to set up production? So all these things happen at the same time in the moment. And it's important that they happen at the same time. But this is really, especially for startups, a big challenge. Because as you see, when we're talking about hydrogen on the European stage, for example, the main thing you hear is we need more final investment decisions. We need more things really to be done and implemented. And those questions of implementing it and making a final investment decisions, those questions are not addressed to startups. they're addressed to multinational corporations, they're addressed to really big energy companies, to really big traditional industries. And if those industries can't make a financial investment decision, for sure, because they are waiting for yet another regulation, for yet another detail to be clarified, for yet another security belt to build, or yet another funding scheme or subsidy scheme to be implemented.
Yeah.
How do you think a startup feels when they are challenged with this hen and egg thing? Should you focus on production? Should you focus on industrial use of hydrogen? So this is a big thing. We are seeing that the wave is rolling and many things get clarified. But just to make it really to make it really a political issue of the day is, of course, everybody's curious after elections in Europe what will happen next. Will the Green Deal stand, or will there be compromises, or will there be challenges, or will there be changes? And one of the changes we see, for example, is basically a good change, because as Jorgo from Hydrogen Europe is stating it, we see the end of the rainbow, not meaning that it is the end of all hope, as you could think, but it is the end of the colors. It is the end of green hydrogen is only green if this and that, and pink hydrogen with nuclear power is not good because, as the Germans see it, or the blue hydrogen has challenges because. We need to address hydrogen, we need to address all the solutions we can get in order to find the best way to decarbonize, because we shouldn't forget it is not about hydrogen, it is about decarbonization, about saving CO2, and whatever we can do to do that, that's a good thing. And this is the big challenge that, as I said, the big corporations are facing. And of course, it's a challenge for the startups as well. And what we can do is to address this, to tell policymakers, to tell lobbying institutions, to tell industry people not to forget the innovative input they need in order to deal with these challenges. And many of the corporations now, and there has been a study by the MIT, for example, that a lot of corporates at the moment are not only investing in their own R&D, but investing in cooperation with startups, because it's sometimes much easier to get innovation by a third party into your company. It's easier to deal with innovative details. So this is the whole scope that makes it complicated. And what HUB is doing is we are addressing these topics. We're inviting people, not only people that are advocating hydrogen is the solution for everything, but also critical people, because we want to challenge ourselves. Like, are we on the right path? Are we working in the right context? And hopefully we see some reaction, but the attendance of a lot of interesting people, also from politics to our conventions and events, shows us there is an interest in this topic, and we believe in the power of innovation, and that we will convince people to regard startups as a very important player in this game.
From that perspective, I remember you paired this year Jorgo and Michael Liebreich. So that was a boxing match, I assume. Do you feel a little bit like a Don King?
No, not at all. It was really a serious discussion in our team and with our people. Should we invite not only a known advocate for a positive advocate for hydrogen as Jorgo? What about all those critical voices, for example, of Michael Liebreich? But we decided, you know, many startups get many critical questions when they are looking for investment, when they are looking for partnership. Is this really the right topic? Do you really believe in hydrogen in mobility? Do you really believe in hydrogen in whatever heat? And in order not to ban critical comments to the comments in LinkedIn or social media, but to discuss them on stage, it was our aim to invite not only the known positive voices, but also some critical comments. And by the way, what Michael Liebreich did at the Heidelberg Convention was really a deep dive into opportunities. And since we are also working with his so-called hydrogen ladder to find out where to put the money, where to steer startups to a square in this hydrogen ladder where you can really make a difference and where it will be economically successful, hopefully, to engage in hydrogen. So it was not at all a question of critics here, positive voices there. There was something in it for everyone. And the feedback we got was really astounding. Like say, this is a bold move, not only to invite to a hydrogen event, all those positive, motivated people who are advocating hydrogen, but also to bringing some voices that speak of realities, that speak of money, that speak of large sums of money we need to invest in that. And we believe this is the way for us to be realistic, and being realistic in this respect means to discuss with critics.
How do you stay ahead of the curve?
Well, by getting around a lot, I would say. It's really important for us that we are not only offering something to startups and corporates and investors, but also learning from them. So this is why we call ourselves an open innovation platform, because we invite people to the platform to get us their insights. And this not only in Europe, meanwhile, but from all over the world. We have a very strong connection at the moment with Japan, exchanging views on how to deal with hydrogen, how to use hydrogen, how to transport hydrogen, which is very important when we get or when we take into consideration that the amount of hydrogen that will be needed, for example, here in Germany, will not be produced in Germany. So we need a lot of hydrogen to be imported, and to discuss with people who have same challenges or same strategies. This is quite important. So we are not just giving away knowledge and expertise, but we are like a sponge, sucking it up, asking for knowledge, deep diving into specific topics every day. So we try to keep our heads up there. But it's an interesting thing. It's really demanding, because every day you find a new detail, you have to check a new detail. But this is what we are doing, and my really engaged team of only 11 people does a splendid job in keeping our heads up here.
How do you look at the shaping of hydrogen policies, and what could be your impact?
Well, what we are trying to do is to be present also where policymakers talk about hydrogen. From the European perspective, this is, of course, teaming up and working together with Hydrogen Europe. And for the third year now, we will be participating in the Hydrogen Week in Brussels to bring startups to the event, to discuss with startups and about startups and their role in the hydrogen economy. And we believe in discussion. Like, there will be no way in influencing someone into something that they doesn't want. So we believe in showing what is possible already, what could be possible if we allocated a little bit more money here and had another program there. Because one of the important issues, for example, on the European stage is to stay in the race when it comes to hydrogen innovation compared to the US, for example. You know that many companies are looking into investment or even engagement in the US because of the Inflation Reduction Act and its simplicity when it comes to supporting hydrogen entrepreneurs on their way into the market. And then again, on the European level, we have an even bigger sum dedicated to support the hydrogen industry. But sometimes the ways to get that money, the ways into programs are a little bit complicated. maybe this is a European speciality. And we try to address these topics by stating out that, especially, for example, the scaling phase of hydrogen startups is really not financed enough in Europe compared, for example, to the US. As I said, we put a lot of good money into science, into research, but then when it comes to a phase where startups, especially hardware startups, need money to show that their thing is working, to build up a pilot plant, to build up a first-of-a-kind plant. In this respect, we do not have enough funding schemes at the moment in Europe, and therefore we are talking and talking and talking to those people. We are doing this not only on a regional, on a German level, but on a European level, and in comparison with global trends. And this is what we are trying to do, and hopefully we are heard here.
How do you foster international hydrogen ecosystem through global partnerships?
Well, we try to reach out to those regions or countries that are very active when it comes to hydrogen, and those regions who have, well, outstanding or very special environments for their hydrogen industry. For example, it's quite important to know, or you know that, of course, that the price of hydrogen finally will depend on the price of energy you put into the system in order to produce hydrogen. So from a German or Northern European perspective, sometimes it's really hard to see where will this green, cheap energy be coming from when we take into consideration that a lot of electrification is still to be done, and we need a lot of green electricity for electrification first, before we can dive very deep into making use of this green energy to produce hydrogen. So it makes a lot of sense for startups, for companies to team up with regions in the world where the price of green electricity is not as problematic as it is, for example, in Germany. So a lot of startups are having a look into the Middle East, into North Africa, but also into Australia and South America, because electricity prices are not as dominant there in the hydrogen business as they are in Central Europe. So it is about facts that we are reaching out, and then it is about opportunities. Like when we see startups or companies from Japan, from Canada, from Brazil taking an interest in what we are doing, of course we are reaching out, introducing the startups, because as I said, we see it as a global market. It's not a regional market. So when a German startup can make their money in the Middle East, or when a Portuguese startup can make their money in Australia or in Sweden or in Poland, that's how it works. And these are the opportunities we would like to provide to really build an international network where people and startups and corporates can take their chances and find the right partners to be successful in this business.
There are so many questions I would like to ask you, but I think we will leave that for the live show, because you have a clinical precision when it comes to touching the points which are the pain points of hydrogen in the world. Uwe, thank you for being my guest today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.